This is about getting great, and this will help you get there. I don't know why you do a warm-up, but I know why I do a warm-up. I do a warm-up so that I can put myself in the best place for a good performance or a good practice session. Our warm-up needs to sort of cover everything that we kind of already know how to do. There's a certain way in which, as we get to be a better player, that requires us to do some different things in our warm-up. But a warm-up, at whatever level we are, should include some work on tone, some work on scales, and some work on articulation. For sure, the very, very least. There are a couple different entry points for clarinetists. There's those of us that started on clarinet, and we don't know anything different than the fundamental complications of this instrument. But oftentimes, people that are coming to the clarinet from saxophone already know how to read the music. They already know how to read rhythms. They have a lot of things they can do. And they find, oftentimes, if not all the time, our pinky situation to be very frustrating. Which pinky to use when, how to get to it, all that kind of stuff. And also, getting through what we call the throw tones. G, A flat, A, B flat, up to B natural. Those can be complicated things. Also, we've got a set of alternate fingerings that is sometimes close to, or the same as the saxophone, sometimes not. Right? We've got this sliver finger down here in the right hand that most saxophone players that I know, anyway, don't really use that often. Primarily just for a chromatic scale. A fast chromatic scale. I know a lot of them that don't even do that because the tone hole is in the back. But that's a whole other story about the saxophone that we don't need to tell today. However, there are two different E flats that can be used. E flat, B flats here and over here. And it can be tough to get to all the fingerings. And particularly do it with confidence. So these two books, the Vade-Mecum by Jeanjean and the Modern Daily Studies by Opperman, both linked down in the description. Let me tell you again, these are Amazon links if you're going to buy these books. Buy them from here, would you? Because it gives me a couple cents, and I put that couple cents right into doing these videos, because sometimes I start these videos, I don't have any sense. These books go through what is, I think, one of the fundamental ways in which we can learn the clarinet faster and better. And very rarely do you get faster and better all at the same time. When we move one finger at a time, kind of level 1 type of fingers. Level 2 would be moving 2 fingers or more on the same hand, okay, and the same direction. The directionality of our fingers is important because fingers going the same direction, easy on our brain. Fingers going opposite directions, far more difficult for our brain. So that's the distinction, right? If we're moving fingers opposite directions in one hand, that's harder. You get the idea. Now, where it gets even more interesting and pedantic to parse out is when we're moving fingers on 2 hands. If we're going from F to A in the clarion register, we're moving 2 fingers the same direction, but using 2 different hands. As if we have more hands, but using both hands. All right, and now that is actually a little bit difficult for our brain. But where it gets even more difficult for our brain is when we're moving both hands, but different directions, like F to A flat in the clarion register, where we've got to coordinate a finger going down and a finger coming up. Wouldn't it be nice if somebody just built exercises to get these things deeply inside of us? Yeah, it would, and they did. Jeanjean and Opperman wrote 2 books that do exactly this thing. And, God, shouldn't they include some articulation? Yeah, and they did. Shouldn't they include some tone exercises? Jeanjean did. These books have a complete set of what you should practice every day. And quite honestly, if you only have an hour to practice, it wouldn't be bad just to play through one of these books. They're really, really good. Let's go through them kind of fast, but not too fast. Non tropo. These books are broken down into left-hand studies, right-hand studies, and more. Jeanjean starts out his book, actually, with something super cool. It's this exercise here. Now, this exercise helps us really get these fingerings that, sometimes to go a step, half step or whole step, we use one finger. Pretty easy. Both half steps, both one finger. And we should keep our, when we're going E to F, and then F sharp to F, we keep our pinky down, just rotate these fingers here. My clarinet's very clanky. I'm going to the repair shop, I'll make a video about it. But it's time to get my clarinet worked on. But some fingerings, to go a step, require, this is a whole step, but like G sharp to F sharp. Well, that's annoying because we've got to move two fingers in the opposite direction just to move one step. Right there. Oh, this is super annoying. But this book makes it less annoying because we get to practice it in a very organized fashion. All the way through all the different fingerings we could get. Kind of through the shallow mo up into the beginning of the clarinet register. For example, using a different fingering for the same note within the same passage. Where we go B flat to B, B flat to B natural, B flat to B natural, then C to B, C to B, C to B, C to B, but we're going to B flat, so we've got to go to, so we've got to change fingerings. Check it out how it looks. Really, really helpful. Same thing when we are using our chromatic F sharp. If you don't know, chromatic F sharp is thumb plus the bottom two side keys here. One of my most favorite questions from people starting the clarinet is, what does this one do? Well, it only has one purpose, and this is it. Well, there's more purposes, but that's the main one purpose. So it gives us a chance to practice all those fingerings, and that's great, whether we are just learning the clarinet, reviewing what we know on the clarinet, or learning the clarinet after we already know the saxophone. We move on to left-hand studies in the Jeanjean, built really smart. We practice going from B flat, which is a fingering we don't have on the saxophone, so very specific. This doesn't really exist on the flute. Oboe doesn't have anything like this. And we practice from the B flat going to different notes. We've got some chromatic things. This builds it out in a very logical fashion. So we start with the skill, and then we build upon that skill. It's what we would call scaffolding in the music education world. It's good. Scaffold. But you don't have to. Jeanjean did it. Moving on, there's a section called meno, which means less. And this breaks it up into groups of 4. And then it expands it into a group of 6, taking us up into the altissimo register of our instrument. So it also helps us connect these registers, which is a big, big help. Get our air going, get our embouchure going, get everything happening just right. all this happens, again, in the right hand studies. All the same ideas. Using all these different fingerings, practicing going from notes to notes that require opposite motion in both of our hands. It has a meno section, same idea. The next section in this is the articulation section. And it starts out with a page I've never seen anything like it. And I think that I'm reading and understanding it correctly, where it's a flutter tongue. Now, I didn't do this page for probably the first 10 to 15 years I played this book. I just kind of ignored this page. But here's what flutter tonguing does. It activates the muscles in our tongue. And by the way, I don't even know if that's what this is really about, but this is how I use it. And I love it. So I want to share it with you. I flutter tongue. And if you don't know about flutter tonguing, it's basically going while you play the clarinet. Produces a really weird sound. But here's also what it requires you to do. It requires you to use a very solid, fast, activated airstream. Otherwise, you don't have enough energy to make that. It actually takes a certain amount of juice, and that juice helps you play the clarinet. The other thing it does is it puts your tongue right in the position where the reed is. And so your tongue gets naturally into the position it needs to be to articulate. Brilliant. Again, I don't know if this is what Jeanjean wanted us to do, but this is how I use it, and this works for me. And then we have an articulation exercise. And this articulation exercise is great. It changes the rhythm. It gives us a thing, and then changes the rhythm of that thing just a little bit, so that we have some variety and some variation and differentiation in how we articulate and how we coordinate it with our fingers. Because articulation is about cleanliness, speed, and coordination with our fingers when we're trying to put things together. And this exercise bakes it right in a brilliant way. to the scale exercise, we have something that is rarely seen in a scale exercise. And this might be the only place I've ever seen it written down, where we start with a 16th rest. Wow, cool. It takes us up through the major scale. It gives us an arpeggio. And then it gives us a chromatic scale, connecting it down to our relative minor scale, in this case, C to A. And then we've got the same thing, starting off on a 16th rest. This is really interesting. It's a lot different. And then the same thing, takes us through an arpeggio, a scale, and a chromatic scale with a suspicious whole step. Look out for that one. Right into F major. Same thing. D minor. Same thing. All the way through the circle of fifths, which means all the way through every key signature we could possibly have until we get to C major again. And it is a good one. It's a comprehensive scale exercise. It goes from root to root. That's the kind of scale exercise this is. It's a good one. You should be able to do it. And then, following that, we've got a tone exercise. And now this can really challenge us to play as quietly as we possibly can. This really helps us control our instrument at a quiet dynamic. Gives us a lot to do, has us playing through technical things at a soft dynamic, which we don't really get to do all that much. Usually when we're playing fast, we play loud. But this gives it to us soft, and it's a really good practice for us. That's the Jeanjean in a nutshell. Let's move on to the Modern Daily Studies by Mr. Kalman Opperman. Kalman Opperman was a very, very important, very big teacher in America in the 20th century. He died a few years ago, leaving a legacy of students and education and books and barrels and probably mouthpieces. I don't know. Lots of stuff that he contributed to our world. He must have looked at the Jeanjean and said, brilliant, and he did his own version of it. And there's some differences in this version that I would say you should use both, because they're both great. He starts out with a left-hand study. You'll recognize the focus on the B flat. He gives us another left-hand study. Another left-hand study. Then he moves into some right hand studies. Let's look at the first one. And this next left-hand study, super interesting because it really cycles very quickly through using right-hand C and left-hand C. All the pinkies are flipping around. You have to use the other pinky than the one you used previously. This gives us the hardest version of shifting our pinkies around using these different fingerings that I've ever seen. It's a really good one, and it's really, really worth doing. Next, we have a register key study. And this is really great because it just gets us from any place on the clarinet down into another register. I mean, it really helps us get the register key smooth, really helps us use our air to get between those different registers, make it smooth, make it beautiful, making it so that our register key is not a problem for us. Following that, the coolest chromatic study ever written. This chromatic study doesn't really give us a complete chromatic scale. It breaks it up. It moves it around in little segments. So we've got to be really quick to get to our chromatic fingerings. And the fingerings that are most important to really, really practice are this forked, using the sliver key, F sharp and low B, and also getting really comfortable with our alternate side F sharp, going from F to F sharp when we can. It also gives us some practice using our left hand C. Who couldn't use that? It's really, really, really well done. Now we've got a scale study. And this scale study is interesting. It's written in 1/4. Don't see that very often. This is one that he's written out articulations that are a little bit different in every scale. Gives us a chance to add articulation to our scales in a way that's organized. I mean, we can add articulation to any scale exercise we want to at any point, but this gives it to us organized. And it's great. And so we get a chance to play the scale. This scale exercise doesn't go from root to root. It goes from root to full range. Not full range exactly, but kind of, throughout the scales. And then it gives us some exercises in sixths baked right into there. This is a hard one. Those sixths are something that we don't see very often. They take a little bit of extra practice, but it really does help us get from register to register because a lot of the sixths, most of them, are crossing from one register to the other. This is a good one. It's hard. It takes us through the circle of fifths, again, through all 12 keys. This will take you some time, even if you know your scales, to learn this particular exercise, but it's well worth it. Now we're moving to staccato studies. These staccato studies are particularly good because they give our tongue a built-in rest to relax the muscle a little bit, right? So we've got 8th to 16th, 8th to 16th, 8th to 16th, all the way through this first staccato study. Now that gives us a lot of rest, build the muscle. Our tongue is an interesting muscle. Usually muscles contract and relax, but our tongue isn't connected in the same way. I can't medically explain it, but it doesn't really work like that. This helps strengthen the muscles that we are using in our tongue. And this first one doesn't go into extreme registers. It gives us this all in the middle of the instrument, low to middle of the instrument. It's really terrific to help build that muscle. This next staccato study gets a little bit hairy. It flips the rhythm around, which is not the hard part. Instead of eighth to 16ths, it's 2/16 and an eighth. Give us a little bit of variety. I mean, you could flip these around the other way. I mean, you can mess with them if you'd like. I approve. But then it gives us one that has so it adds some 16th notes in there to build our endurance a little bit. And this one does something that's far more difficult than the previous one, which is it gives us the full range of the instrument. I mean, this goes up to high A flat, I think, maybe high A. This goes high, and it's a challenging one. And so that really gives us an opportunity to make sure that our voicing is where it needs to be to articulate in those extreme registers. It's a good one. Our last staccato study is really just about elegantly clipping the notes. So we've got ta 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 ta. Making a nice, elegant end to those notes with, I wouldn't call it a tongue stop. It's a tongue articulation for sure. We're not supposed to tongue stop. I hate to say it out loud, but we're not. But we do practice it here to make it sound not. We don't want it to sound not that kind of tongue stop. To make it cleaner and beautiful. Not, you know what I'm saying. That's the end of the warm-up portion of this book for me. There's plenty more stuff to do. It's good stuff, but there's a grace note study. Hard. Do it. Grace notes are a thing that we need to talk about and to do, but that to me isn't particularly warm-up material. So that's what I use that book as a warm-up. Getting through that much of this book, it's an achievement. I would say either one of these books can be good to pick and choose parts of the warm-up. Do the whole thing. If you've got 45 minutes to warm up, do these. Maybe not 45 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. It might take some actual dedicated practice time to master these exercises in order to then put them into your warm-up. That's one of the sinister things about these books, is that they do require some fundamental solidity in what we're doing, and then we can place them in the warm-up, and then it really is reviewing the things that we already know, reviewing our sound, our scales, and our articulation, and having it be that when it comes to jump into literature, or when it comes to jump into an etude, or when we're ready to perform, our muscles are ready. I mean, these books can be very tiring. I wouldn't do it in the warm-up room right before the performance or the audition, but early on in the day, that puts you in your place. It's like doing your stretches. That's how to warm up, according to me. That's how I do it. You do it how you'd like, but I think you should give us a try. And again, these books are down in the description. You can get them for free. You can. You can just do the title of the book, free PDF. You will get a free PDF. It's available on the internet. These books are still being published, and publishers are probably struggling right now because people are getting free PDFs all over the place. We need to keep these members of the community alive and well. That's how I feel. And it's very nice to be able to mark your book with a pencil, have your book on the stand, have it full size unless you have an iPad Pro, whatever. All these things. I am a proponent for actual paper, marking it up with your own pencil, have it be a part of your life. These books have traveled with me. I've probably bought 3 copies of each of these books because they've gotten so torn up in the past 35 years. And I'm happy to have done so. If you want them, buy from my links, would you? And if not, get a free PDF, whatever. But warm up, practice. Have a great time. I'll see you next time on Clarinet Ninja.